I'm Randy Maugans, and how you doing? It is June 5th, 2013 on planet Earth. I've got a great show lined up tonight. Chris Hawley is here with me, and our guest is on the line as well. So we're doing pretty well, actually. It's been almost like one of those weeks that's been too terribly quiet. But I did find, we'll have to ask our guest about this. This article showed up in my, I have a Google search thing that goes out and finds me stories, and one of them pulled up this article about UFO, New Jersey witness reports mass abduction. This is dated June 3rd. And it is in the website for the Canadian. And I don't know how mainstream this newspaper is, but the article details a witness in New Jersey who has suggested that mass abduction by manipulative extraterrestrials have been occurring in the region. He talks about possible communications with alien beings on the 20th of May this year at about 12 a.m., and the report has been obtained from a testimony included in the database of Mutual UFO Network. Our friend who was on with us a few weeks ago is with New Jersey MUFON, so we'll have to get him back on to talk about this. But it's interesting to see how UFO stories show up now in unusual places, and it kind of goes to the heart of the matter. Is the mainstream catching on? Is there something else going on? All of these things kind of point to the fact that there is a growing awareness of something that's going on out there. We're going to talk about paranormal tonight, and the paranormal and the UFO thing they're connected in interesting ways. But they're not mutually exclusive of each other. And that's one of the things I want to talk to our guest about. We're not going to do a show next week. We've decided to take the week off. Chris and I have both been sensing tiredness and the need to perhaps just pull back and take a week off. So we will be back the following week. And once I pull up the schedule, I'll be able to tell you who's coming. But we have a great show lined up tonight. With us on the line is, first off, my co-host, Chris Hawley. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening. Good to be here, as always.
It's wonderful to hear your voice. And on the line with Chris and I tonight, from Southern Ontario, Canada, is our guest. Steve Genier is the co-host of Nocturnal Frequency Radio, which is a pretty long-running radio show. And he and his partner, his co-host Alex, have been doing this for a number of years. He is also the founder of the Southern Ontario Paranormal Society, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. These are people that actually do real investigations. Steve, good evening, and welcome to OffPlanet Radio.
Oh, thank you, Randy. And I must say, you nailed my last name perfectly.
See, I told you that French would pay off someday.
I requested not to do it, Steve, because with my Long Island, New York accent, I didn't think you'd want to speak to me again after.
Usually I get Junior, but that was perfect.
Thank you. We worked at that. After misspelling it on the upcoming announcements, I figured I owed it to you to at least be able to enunciate it correctly. And so, yeah, I have a little bit of French background, and I actually went out and listened to a bunch of your shows, so I picked that up. I cheated.
Hopefully it didn't scare you away.
Oh, no, not at all. Nothing. The only thing that scares me... No, we won't go there. Anyway, it's good to have you on tonight. You kind of bring to this conversation some things that Chris and I kind of go in our own weird direction, but you and Alex have been doing journeyman work for a long time in dealing with on-the-ground paranormal occurrences of the type that... Well, I'll let you explain it, because first off, I'm interested to know about the Southern Ontario Paranormal Society and the history of you and Alex's radio show. And by way of mention, let people know who Alex is and why he was not able to be on with us tonight.
Myself, in terms of the paranormal, I think it's always been there ever since I was a kid. I think like a lot of us, the strange things intrigued us, but with me, it just, I decided to take it a little further and wanted to know really what was going on, or at least try to know. And that developed into actually investigating, and first researching it and then investigating it. And we're not just talking about and I hate saying that. Chris knows I hate saying the word ghosts, but the spirit world, I guess, if you will. And but it reaches the I guess all dark corners of the unknown. I mean, there's just so much out there that we just don't understand, and to clump it down into one avenue, and eventually, I guess it was 2008. I decided to, after working on several other radio shows as producing and handling guests and stuff like that, I decided I wanted to maybe sort of step forward and maybe jump in the host chair myself. And since 2008, Nocturnal Frequency Radio has been broadcasting, and with my co-host coming in 2010, Alex Rondini joined the show, and we've been going ever since.
You gave what I consider to be the perfect answer to how you got involved with this. It's always been there. That's actually, when I ask guests how they get involved with whatever we're talking about, but, it centers around the unusual, the strange, the paranormal, whatever it is. You inevitably find that the genuine answer is, it's just been a presence in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. It just seems that I guess it's following me right now, especially with the experiences that I've had, personal experiences outside of investigations and research that obviously keep me intrigued.
So I guess, Chris, jump in here. I'm not letting you slack too much tonight.
I just want to say, I was glad that you asked. Randy always comes up with the best questions, Steve, so just get ready for that. You're going to need your thinking cap with him. But Steve, I'm so glad you told us all that, because you're a friend of mine. I consider you a friend, and I didn't know those things. So I'm glad you got it out there. Also, just take a second before we get too involved and forget, and tell everybody how they can find you, Steve, and hear your show and get to your site.
Well, Southern Ontario Paranormal Society's website is SOPSinvestigations.com, and it's currently under construction, reconstruction or reconstructive surgery, whatever, however you want to put it. I don't know. It's a long-going process, but it's there, and it's right now, it just directs us to our Facebook group for the time being. And the show, Nocturnal Frequency Radio, can be found on BlogTalk Radio at blogtalkradio.com/nocturnal_frequency.
Great. Now, Randy, I would like to start, me, right at the creature incident, but it's up to you. Because I think that, the reason that I enjoy my time talking to Steve is because he has had experiences and understands the nuances of people that have encountered things and don't understand them. And I, in fact, wrote an article about him one time because he told me about this event that happened to him on one of his nights that he was walking home. He worked at nights, I believe, at the time. Steve will tell us the whole story. And encountered what I considered completely the unknown. Steve, tell us what happened.
It still haunts you, doesn't it, Chris?
Yes, very much. It frightens me. Yes, it does. I was working midnight at my time, and I finished early one evening. I think it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was beautiful. It was fall, late September, early October, I believe, and it was actually very beautiful out. And I said, I'm going to take it easy and walk home.
And I'm walking home and to this suburban area, walking along the sidewalk down the street, very quiet, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I started to approach a bridge over a well-known river in the area, and the bridge was sectioned into two lanes per bridge going opposite directions with a grassy medium in the middle. And as I'm approaching this bridge, I noticed something coming up from the ravine underneath the one side, the opposite side in which I was walking on. And at first I didn't really pay attention. I just thought, okay, it's just an animal. But then I seen it, it went across the road and stopped in the middle, like the grassy median area in between the two bridges. And at first it was just on all fours, just staring at me, and then all of a sudden it got up on its hind legs as if it was human. Like it stood, I'd have to say at least almost 5 feet, if not taller than 5 feet. And when it stood, it stood without any problems whatsoever for a good 5 minutes solid, staring me down. And I stood there, and I'm trying to process exactly what this thing could possibly be. Everything ran through my head. Okay, what's in this area? What could this? It's not a bear. It's just too thin. It's not a deer. It's not a raccoon. It's much too tall, much too big. I just couldn't place it. But it was, just. The instinct in me was, look, I can't run. I mean, there's no point in running. I need to observe this, but at the same time, I need to be careful. And it was like a standoff, and it was as if it was waiting for me to make a move, and I the same. And it finally got tired of it, and got back on all four of its legs, or however you want to put it. And very stealthy, ran off to the side of the road that I'd been standing on, and down back underneath the bridge. And what really freaked me out, and what made me think, okay, this is not normal, is the movement of this animal. It was unusual, natural. And just the fact that it was standing the way it was, almost as if it was human-like. I was like, wow. And it's funny because I sort of put it in the closet for a while, for a few years, and then I think Chris, actually, you sort of, when
tell the story.
I said, Chris, I got a really good story for you. Bang, things sort of started rolling again when I told you about it.
Was this thing? What color was it? Explain to the people as much as you can about its appearance. It was covered in hair, wasn't it? Even on its face? Or I can't remember if you told me it didn't have hair on its face.
It's very tough to say if it did have hair or not. Again, because of the distance I was at, and because of the lighting. It was very tough. It was very dark. There's no doubt about it. It was very dark. It's not a smoky gray to a very dark, even black. And I could not see the eyes. Did you feel threatened at any time that this thing might charge you? Do you think it was contemplating that? I mean, we can sense fear. What were your senses in your body telling you this thing was trying to do? Was it just looking at you, sizing you up, or was it deciding what to do with you? Well, with me, it's always been, whenever always encountered something unusual, unknown, and something that would probably mostly freak out the normal person. I felt a sense of inquisitiveness, but at the same time, I felt that I needed to be careful. But was it going to charge me? It was running across my mind again, and that's why I said I needed to just prevent and be careful, and don't make any quick movements. Just stand still and let this thing do what it's going to do.
Yeah,
you know?
that was frightening. And then later on, Steve did have the courage, which I give him great credit for. In fact, I yelled at him about it, went back with his co-host Alex and only, I think, another friend, right?
Yeah.
And they climbed down into that ravine to see what was there and tell them what you found. Just, you know.
Well, it's funny because trying to describe the creature, I had trouble to relate it to people, you know, and I think once it was back in my consciousness, I really started to do a little bit of research background on people who might have encountered strange things in the area, and then for some reason I was attracted to a similar sighting that happened in the 70s in Toronto, Ontario. A well-known case called the Toronto tunnel creature. And when I saw the artist's rendition of this creature, I said, wow, that's exactly what I saw. Exactly. Minus the red eyes that were being reported. I did not see any red eyes when I saw this creature, but the shape, the outline, everything is just looked exactly what I had spotted that night that I spotted my encounter with this strange creature. But so we went down and we said, you know, we're going to sort of shoot a little documentary sort of thing and do a little bit of investigative reporting. And we went down into this area, and like I said, you know, it's kind of hard because I mean, you have kids down there. There's kids down there, and there was that night. But what sort of conclusion we came to, I guess. Well, I don't want to say conclusion, but as best as
a possibility.
Yeah, possibility-wise, was that there was a massive storm drain runoff opening that any one of us could have easily climbed in and out of without being noticed. And I'm thinking to myself, this is probably where this creature either lives, came from, or hid at one point, at least when I spotted it. And again, I started to relate it to the Toronto tunnel creature, which again was spotted in the sewer system in a Toronto suburb, or not suburb, but a section of the city. And it just, as far as it stands, that's where it stands right now.
And when I wrote this up for Steve's story and sent it out, you know, and published it as one of my articles, I did receive from people around the United States and Canada reports. There was only like 5 or 6, if I remember right, Steve, but they said that they had very similar experiences to Steve, and they were all surrounding a riverway or a waterway where they had the sewage, the large, what would you call them, the large piping that would run along and out to the sea or out to other rivers. So apparently there's something that's using our, you know, waterways and sewage systems to travel that Steve caught a view of, and who knows what it is. What do you think, Randy?
Yeah, I just pulled up the article. I was curious to see what the press had to say about this, and I found the article that has an artist's rendering of this. Mm-hmm. These stories of different types of creatures, in a way, they feel kind of ancient almost, because you go back through history, fables, fairy tales, lore, and you hear similar stories as well of creatures that apparently seem to inhabit the subterranean refuge, you know, whether it's sewage system, the bridges. I noted somebody on the chat room had put in the remark, bridge troll. But, you know, behind all of these legends and lore, there's a fair amount of truth in terms of something that lurks in the background of our culture, something that's separate from us, but occasionally interacts with us. And the interesting thing to me as Steve was relating this was he had a fair amount of detail in his recounting, and clearly there was a lot of presence of mind there in terms of how he interacted with this particular being. In other words, I don't know, I mean, you come across something strange like that, especially at night, and your first impulse is to freak out. And it begs the question, who would have been more afraid? Would it have been the human, or would it have been the being that you encountered? Because it seems like these beings do not really have a desire to be around humans in some way.
That's a good question. And Steve, I wanted to ask you, did you think ever that it was some type of, I don't even know where to go with this, Earth-like or visiting or extra-dimensional or some kind of spiritual thing that took this shape to look at you? That maybe it wasn't where we're going with it, that something else completely that we're just not hooking into?
Well, I mean, initially, like when I first saw it at first sight, again, like I said, I just thought it was just a regular animal until it started to stand up. And then when it stood up, I was thinking, okay, perhaps this is maybe something down the road that it got lost within the environment. Something that is always there, but we never pay attention because we never see it. Again, you know how humans are. They like to have things that are tangible, things that they can see, touch, feel, and this just seems to be one of those things that people can't. To me, that's what it was, and I'm like, okay, I know it's real. I know I'm not seeing things. I'm as sane as can be. I'm not drunk. I'm not overly tired. I was completely sober, sane, and just wow.
Yeah.
I am experiencing something that many others don't really get to experience, and when they do, they probably don't even pay heed to it.
You just, and that actually goes into an interesting point about any of this phenomena, including a lot of the stuff that Chris and I talk about. And it has to do with, I guess, selective perception. And the fact that once you are aware of the possibility of a thing, that thing then becomes possible, meaning you're open to this type of experience because clearly in your life strange things have happened. And we find this as well with people who are experiencers in the UFO realm, that their disbelief is suspended. They're able to perceive things, and generally there's a pattern that follows, and the pattern is that there'll be recurrences. It may be decades between recurrences, but for some reason, once we are able to suspend disbelief, we then are open to seeing things that I think are always there, but most people, through, I guess, cognitive dissonance, selective perception, aren't able to experience, or they block it out. What is your sense of that?
I agree. How can you not agree with something like that? Because I mean, you hear about it all the time, and no matter what field it is, if somebody investigates the spirit world, or somebody who investigates the UFO world, or so on and so on, cryptozoology, whatever. People could say that about Bigfoot. Why are only some people seeing Bigfoot, and why is there any hardcore evidence, or these questions all relate to exactly what you're saying, Randy, and one would have to agree with it. Yeah,
there's a guy that I've talked to a couple of times over the years. Andy Colvin, who was in West Virginia in the 1970s when the famous Mothman events occurred. Mm-hmm. And a very strange period of time that had all kinds of men in black, UFOs, a whole plethora of things emerged out of that, not the least of which was the collapse of a bridge on Christmas Eve, and a series of very strange events that impacted people's lives in this small West Virginia town. And the stories about Mothmen and the Men in Black are legend. And yet at the same time, they've been well detailed, and a movie was even made about this. John Keel wrote about it, one of the great masters of, I guess what you would call early zoology and even paranormal investigation. All of this phenomena overlaps in each other. But when we were doing the intro tonight, you said something again that's kind of key. We want to roll all of this up in a nice, neat package and call it something. But at any given time, and I've said this now for a couple of years regarding ufology, we may not be dealing with one thing. We may be dealing with many things that manifest as, I guess, certain syndromes that all go back to what we're talking about, which is the perception of reality, the perception of what we call reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when I look at it, this realm, if you will, and all its various levels and areas, I like to look at things with a sense of skepticism, mm-hmm. but at the same time, I also like to keep everything open, because we all know we don't fully understand a lot of what's going on. There's no doubt about it. No matter what's thrown at us in terms of people trying to debunk whatever, there's always that element of complete unknown. And as much of a skeptic as I want to be, to truly, I guess, fully understand the right essence of it all, because we all know there's a lot of cookie cutting and a lot of sugar and ice on a lot of these stories and a lot of the stuff that's going on out there now because of a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of seriousness here, and that's why I'm a part of this. The seriousness, to truly wanting to know where things are supposed to go, and why we don't know how to get them to that position. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would like to just throw in my opinion of this. I go along with everything both of you just said, and I think there are many, many things that we keep trying to put, as Randy said, into one box. So all the UFO things go here, and they're all only from, another planet in this universe, and that's what that is. And I don't think that. I think that the range is so big of what we do not understand that we haven't even put our tiny little pinky in it yet. We just can't get there. And the reason for that is I find when I watch all the scientific shows that they try to put on, or read different people's articles, or interview people, present company not included in this remark, by the way, because you're very open-minded and understand this. But humans have a tendency to put everything into the knowledge they now have and refuse to include or acknowledge or accept the fact that most things we have little or no knowledge of, so we cannot keyhole them. Yet we insist on humanizing them, and scientists are the worst for this. They will tell you something can or can't be judged solely on the amount of scientific knowledge they now understand. They refuse to go anywhere where they have to admit they just don't know. And unfortunately, I think most of this stuff, 90% of it, is in that category of we just don't know. And it could be a whole different set of science that is involved in this other place that we can't get a grasp of. So until we stop thinking like humans and completely open up that there's many other things that can and obviously do exist, we're going to stay locked in our little boxes and never figure it out. And that's been a lifelong frustration for me. And I also just want to throw in quickly, everything we're saying about this bridge monster and what it could have been or is, or God help me, I hope it never comes back for you again, please. But, you know, it always had a tremendous impact, his story on me, because when I was 16 years old, I had a terrible, terrible experience with a creature and that went into my house. And I went home with my friends, and this thing was in the house. And I'm not going to go through the whole story, but it was a thing. It didn't smell human. It was howling. It was ripped and clawed at the walls in our house. It ran around messing with the electricity in the house, giving a light show that was phenomenal. The police came. Everything happened. My parents were there. Everybody was crying and terrified. But the thing that I can't get away from is in front of the house I lived in at that time was this huge ditch with the drainage pipes that were 5 foot high that ran right through my town, right through a state park, out into the ocean. And that always bothered me when I heard Steve's story that these things may somehow be either entering or living at the water's edge, in the ground, in caves, in wells, I don't know what. But I think there's some kind of connection with some of the things that a lot of us have experienced in our waterways, because I had to deal with it myself.
You know, just to add to, Chris, what you were saying there earlier, I think a lot of it, though, has to do with us as a society being desensitized to a lot of this stuff now.
And refusing to look past the knowledge we have. We think we're curious. We're not. We're curious to a point, and then something stops humans from going that extra mile. Not all humans, because if that were the case, none of us would be here tonight. Mm-hmm. But many, many humans, and you all know people like I'm talking about. It can only go to the point where they can explain it in human terms, in the knowledge we have now, or else you're crazy, it didn't happen, and it doesn't exist, when it's quite the opposite. But that's the truth. There's a problem in society of the want and the need to know.
I was impressed listening to some of your back radio shows. And one of the particular episodes I listened to, you and Alex were talking about an investigation that you did with a child who was experiencing something coming into his room at night. Mm-hmm. And what impressed me about that particular investigation, Steve, was that you were very thorough and logical about this, and eventually located electrical issues within the house itself, mm-hmm. that you felt were contributing to this particular circumstance. And you can elaborate on the story a little bit, but the point I wanted to make was, as I listened to you talking about that, I was impressed by the fact that you were practical, you were logical, you were basically looking for the things that could be known about this circumstance, not letting it go all woo-woo, and it didn't have to, but being logical and practical. Maybe fill in a little bit of the background on that story to kind of let the listeners know how you approach something like this. Well,
that particular case, it's not unique. I mean, you hear quite a bit of, or similar to this, but the child was experiencing, when he'd gone to bed, experiencing strange phenomena, visitations in the room, and feeling threatened, and at points where he wouldn't get out of bed because he was too frightened. We were called in. Essentially, when the way I've brought myself into this whole concept of investigating and researching is the fact that, look at, we really have to understand what we know, and then set that aside, explain it to those who are completely they don't know what's going on. They're confused because it's a realm that it's not normal to them. Who do I look to? Do I call the cops and say my son's having problems? Tell you to go see the doctor, or take him to a doctor or a psychiatrist. He's got a problem. Whatever. But anyhow, going in and doing the logical thing is what I'm all about, essentially, and what reflects onto the group, and the investigations and research that we'll do. And basically, with that particular case, was simple: go into the room and see if there's anything environmental that is wreaking havoc on that poor kid. It happens all the time. We don't know about it. Most people know about carbon monoxide. They have carbon monoxide detectors in the house. Before those detectors were in the house, people got sick. They didn't know why. Now they do. Carbon monoxide. It's the same with EMF, electrical. Oh my God, I'm having a brain.
Electromagnetic field,
frequency. Yeah. Oh, and how it interacts with the body. It can wreak havoc on the body in several different ways, depending on the dose, like high dose in short bursts, or low doses in long periods. It has different effects. It can make you sick. It can make you hallucinate. You can eventually, cancer. Because it wreaks havoc on your DNA. And in the kids, in this particular boy's it was the positioning of the EMF frequency. The frequency was his head. And it was causing him to hallucinate. Now, we were trying to determine, okay, how is that happening? We went in with whatever we could detect the frequencies with, and found out there was high levels in that room, where we had to find the positioning. Where is it coming from? The headboard was extremely high. Okay, there are no loose wires. Nothing seems to, warrant any reasoning why it's so high the way it is. It's beyond normal. So I said, okay, well, let's check the other side of the wall. The other side of the wall that was the kitchen. And right there was the microwave. The microwave's cord had a slash in it. So not only is the boy getting frequency from the microwave itself, but the slash on the wire, because it's constantly live now, no matter what, because it's plugged in. So, measured it, yes, high, exactly the same sort of wave we're getting in the room. So I explained to the mother, I said, look, what you would most likely need to do are several things here. Number one, move the position of the boy's bed to an area where there's an outlet, or at least live. Nothing plugged into it. Because it's only when something's plugged into it that it becomes live. Two, you're going to have to get either a new microwave, or you're going to have to take up that gash with electrical tape or whatever. But I would probably get a new microwave altogether. And so on and so on. So essentially, we did a follow-up, and what we found out that the boy was doing really well. He was not having any more incidents, because the boy's bed was moved, and they got a new microwave, and they were astonished.
Thank goodness you were there. God knows what would have happened to that little boy.
Well, exactly.
And see, that points to a practical aspect of this. While we know that there are strange, unexplainable things that are in the realm of the spiritual, the paranormal, whatever, I like when logic and empirical knowledge come into play on it. And we have to straddle a number of different realms at the same time. The demands of the society towards people who research paranormal events has largely been that this is like old wives' tales. You can't prove anything. There's no evidence. And that is the side of skepticism that I consider to be damaging. But at the same time, the skepticism that says, let's look at what we can prove, what we can work with in order to detail the information in a scene like this is useful, because people just freak out. And there are people out there who put out all kinds of wild stories that, if time was taken to research them carefully, we probably would find out there was an explanation. That story brought to my memory something that I remember from when we first moved into the house we live in now, which was many years ago. And I would get up about 6 o'clock in the morning to get ready for work and go out to the kitchen, and I was hearing voices, and I was hearing this on a real consistent basis, and I'm like, what's going on? After a while you hear this, and it was very low. It was very hard to locate where it was coming from. One morning I walked past the microwave oven, which was one of those overhead combination microwave oven exhaust fan things that go over the stove, and I stopped and I listened, and that's where it was coming from. We had an FM radio station 200 yards up on the hill above us. That station's gone now. Our microwave was picking up the signals from the radio station, and this was what I was hearing. But I spent months thinking, I'm insane, I must be going nuts, because I would hear these voices, and it wasn't constant, it was intermittent. It must have had to do with early morning and the way radio waves conduct through the air at certain times of the year. So, here again, I'm prone to thinking, the most bizarre thing possible, but in this case, it was simply a matter of simple logic and paying attention.
Yeah. Randy, you don't know how many times I hear people when they contact me, and the first thing they say is, I hope you don't think I'm crazy. And I have to laugh, and I'm like, no, you're the furthest thing from being crazy. If there's anybody that's crazy, is doing this, looking into this for you, you're not crazy at all. You're as thin as can be. You're just confused and dealing with something you don't have a grasp on. That's all.
But don't you think if everybody took that approach to the paranormal and went about every single thing and said, this is just something, this is science or something, we just do not yet understand. And as soon as we figure it out, then we're going to understand it, be it spiritual or an unidentified object or an alien creature or Bigfoot or whatever. Eventually, if we do everything with logic, we're going to figure it out. And then it's just going to be another known piece of the puzzle of all things. But until we go about it like you guys just went about your incidents, we're not going to get anywhere. It can't be things that give us goosebumps and make us scream around the campfire. It has to be looked at, well, wow, this thing happened. Now we've got to figure out why. And if we did that, believe me, we would be, living on Mars would be so ahead of ourselves because we would open ourselves up to accepting all these things we do not know and finding the answers. And that's been like in my lifetime, please let that happen. But it's not happening, guys. Maybe here, but it's just 3 people.
There's one thing that I always say, and that is there will always be the unknown. No matter how much we learn about the unknown as it is in this current way and our understanding, there will always be more there. No matter how much we reach into that darkness and sort of illuminate it with some light and understanding, there's always going to be something that we don't understand.
That's probably true, and the people that we need to learn from, I'm sure they're still learning too. It's the ever-going, cycle of life. Mm-hmm. But we just have to have that approach about it, though, and we don't. We sort of close it down to scary, I'm not going to go there, or Hollywood movie stuff. And actually, it's if that thing is walking around in your yard, we really ought to figure out where it came from and what it is. I mean, that's just, my thinking. But maybe that makes us the people that kind of stand there still and focus instead of running away or, not dealing with it, or we accept that very fact. And there's many people like us, thank God, that are trying. We just need to get together in one place and really go at it, I think.
There are many people out there that, as I call it, approach it similar to how I've always approached it, with sort of a grassroots sort of approach to it. I mean, let's think logically, obviously, and, understand what we know first before we can call anything paranormal or whatever scenario it is. Because, I mean, let's face it, we probably know a greater percentage of what's going on if we really look down to it.
Right. And with that said, can I use this, Randy, to sneak something in? Because something happened very odd between Randy and I. He brought up a subject that last night while I was talking with him that he wanted to discuss with you, and because you and I have discussed it, Steve, and I didn't think anything of it. And Randy, today I got up, and I don't believe in coincidences. I believe this was an edge that we should talk about it. And there in my email, Randy, what do you think I had? A report of, guess what?
A half cat.
You got it.
Oh, boy.
Unbelievable. And the guy just said, where do I go? Somebody cut my cat in half and left me the top half. He's completely cleaned out like a puppet. I'm very angry. Why are they doing this? And of course, I don't know what to tell the man. What do you think is going on? This now for the whole, let's say 10 years that I've been writing, I've had these reports. Not hundreds a year, but I would say every few months I get one. I've written about it. I've talked about it with Steve. I've talked about it with Randy. Today I got another report. Mine come from Australia, Canada, North America, United States. I've had them from England. I don't know what to make of it. What do you think is going on?
It's funny. I just read a report. Something unusual going on down in Florida, actually. Something that sort of brings a whole new perspective to the norm to this. Because, Chris, we've discussed, cats, cow, and human.
Right.
Wild boar in a Florida forest, in fact. Much like cattle mutilation, the scenario with wild boar in some parts of Florida.
And are they cutting them like the cats and returning them like a little puppet, or are they taking the insides out and leaving them bloodless like the cattle?
Like the cattle, coring them right out clean.
This is one of these phenomena that when you look at it, you go, is there a logical, quote, known cause for something like this? And, you, Chris, you've been on this for a long time. I've been aware of it. I think I kind of avoided it. And the whole cattle mutilation thing, And that bleeds into the UFO thing as well because of the connections to cattle mutilations down in New Mexico and Arizona, and relating to, potential UFO hives or military black ops, depending on who you want to believe. But there is this consistent thread of disembodied, disemboweled, strangely drained carcasses, including humans, who wind up in some very strange places as well.
Yes, yeah. Awful.
And the reason why I brought that up to you was because I was kind of processing all this, and I don't really watch TV, but I do watch things sometimes that entertain me, and I've been going back through the TV series Fringe, which I think has a ton of very cloaked information in it. And there happened to be an episode in the first season of Fringe where they are opening up, and bear with me, my listeners are used to my wild theories. They were opening up portals into a parallel world. Now, that's pretty trippy, but suspend disbelief for a moment. In the one episode, they open up the portal, and they do it over a soccer field in, I think, Canada, where these kids are playing soccer. And when they open it up, one of the soccer players goes out to get the ball and steps into this portal, and he is sliced in half. Cleanly. And this happens twice in the first season of Fringe. And I'm thinking, okay, it's at least opens up the possibility here of something to be looked at. What if we have these portals, these extensions out of 3-4-dimensional reality, where somebody steps into them? What happens to the physical body when it steps into another dimension and is suddenly terminated? So it's a wild theory, but it goes back to the core of this, that from my perspective, this is well documented, and we really don't have a logical explanation for it. So now we have to step into another realm. And it's like I said to you last night, Chris, a conversation I had with my friend over the weekend, and I said, we're to the point now where some things can no longer be explained by traditional science, by traditional empirical knowledge and evidence. We have to step into what I call the spiritual. So that's a wild-ass theory, and you can tell me that my ass is out, but I'm putting that out there as an extension of our normal mode of thinking to say, what if? I mean, how does a human torso wind up in a tree?
Oh, God. And the cats all over the world, I don't know, do they have little... is it just them, or how are these things done, much less why, and why worldwide, yet we're not really interested in figuring it out. All of it is, to me, as unusual as, or the whole thing is as odd as the event, the fact that worldwide we aren't trying to figure out what's cut cats in half, taking the insides out and returning them like little puppets, all cleaned up. I mean, is that a cult? Well, it has to be a worldwide cult. Is it a medical practice to take and use the organs of the cats? They say that about the cattle, too. Oh, that's the government. They don't want to go through the regulations of doing this to animals, so they just take them. Then why do they return them? They would just take the cow and leave. You know what I mean? Just steal the cow.
That's what I was saying about the human mutilations, because obviously we all know it's illegal to do this sort of thing with humans. So what other way would they go about doing it?
My questions go to the fact that when these creatures are found in this particular state, has anybody done forensics on this? In other words, on the scene at the time of discovery with an untouched evidence trail, because I would have a number of questions about the site where this creature is found. For instance, is there trace evidence of something that would have contributed to this condition, Or is there no evidence? I mean, you know as well as I do that in a crime scene investigation, they're looking at anything from blood splatter patterns to trace evidence, anything around the particular scene, and it would be useful if we had more information about this done from a forensic standpoint. Now, this is where science actually is useful.
That's been my biggest complaint for years. No, there is no scientific or criminal research techniques done on any paranormal scene that is done correctly so that you would have the data and evidence needed to properly take and look at what has been gathered and figure it out. It's always done by volunteers, usually without any experience. I watched a MUFON investigation once of an area, and I want just to sit down and cry. They were so clumsy. It was just ridiculous. There was absolutely no research techniques. Any of them ever worked in like a lab. There was no sterile means used or proper taking of specimens from different areas. It was just a boggled mess that ended up with the woman who called them to her, opened her life to them, being criticized and sort of the public led to believe that she was, lying. And it was terrible because I don't think that was the case. It was the lack of professional researchers used on all these problems. Now, wouldn't you think that the government or a university or some kind of private science organization would be interested enough in these bizarre mutilations of all kinds of animals, including humans, to take some kind of interest in it and form a research group that could actually go out and do, Randy, what exactly you say needs to be done? Of course, that's what you would think, but it hasn't happened, and it doesn't happen, and I've got to question why. Why are these brutal things allowed to occur and we really don't investigate it? It's the same thing as why are people allowed to be kidnapped, abducted, and then brought back, when they're brought back, if they're lucky enough to be brought back, end up abused again by society, laughing at them, not believing them, but absolutely nothing done about investigation or taking skin grafts of them where they were harmed or giving them a good physical. No, that's not done. So, it's the question is, why, as a society, do we react that way?
You know what? I think when we come back, we're going to take a break here for maybe about 5 minutes or so. When we come back on the other side, I'd like to continue this conversation because, Steve, I know you and Alex have done investigations. I know your group's doing investigations. I know that you guys have talked about standards, lack of accountability by people who are doing this kind of work. And it's the same conversation that's going on in the UFO realm as well. We have friends that are MUFON investigators, and I don't discredit the people who are working in MUFON, but I have the strong opinion at this point that MUFON simply is no longer a viable means by which to continue investigating all the phenomena that we've put under the umbrella of UFOs. So in the next hour's conversation, let's talk about the state of investigation and how maybe we can begin to approach a holistic approach to this that doesn't entail, excessive regulation or legalization or anything like that, but brings technology and good research practices into the mainstream of researching the paranormal and UFOlogy. And before we take a break on this hour, so we have it on the hour recording, Steve, tell people where they can find you, about your radio show and your websites.
You can find me, my investigative group is Southern Ontario Paranormal Society, which is at SOPSinvestigations.com. And the radio show, Nocturnal Frequency Radio, can be found at blogtalkradio.com/nocturnal_frequency. Or just type in Nocturnal Frequency Radio in the BlogTalk search.
Excellent. Perfect. We're going to take a break here. We're going to come back for the second hour of tonight's show with my guest, Steve Genier, and my co-host, Chris Hawley. This is OffPlanet Radio Live. We will be back in about 6 minutes. Stay tuned. Producer of the Secret of Light series. I would like to invite you to attend the first annual Russellian Science and Philosophy Conference in conjunction with the Center of the One Heart Homecoming Festival, September 7th and 8th, 2013 in Waynesboro, Virginia, at the former home and location of the University of Science and Philosophy. Several speakers will present on the power of love in action, the cosmology of Walter and Leo Russell. Don't miss this opportunity to attend a life-changing event. Get your lodging secured in Waynesboro, Virginia as soon as possible. Volunteer positions are available for those who wish to help. Call Richard at 1-800-741-1012. That's 1-800-741-1012. And visit thesecretoflight.org and oneheartcenter.org for more information. To donate to the event, visit theoracleinstitute.org. Special thanks to Randy Maugans of OffPlanet Radio for sponsoring this infomercial. See you at Swannanoa.
This is Randy Maugans of OffPlanet Radio. The human biology is under stress as never before. Environmental hazards, genetically modified foods, toxins in the earth and air, chemtrails, and escalating radiation levels. How do we get control? Thanks to the work of a team of researchers, we are pleased to announce a revolutionary natural technology that can help your body rebuild its original coding. RNA Drops is a complement formula based on the newly discovered I cell. RNA is the building block of DNA. These new DNA structures are the gateway to what is called ascension. Many users of RNA Drops have discovered the benefits of a product as unique as their own biology, finding newfound well-being, peace of mind, and a sense of control over their destiny. Like me, they are enjoying a sense of empowerment within their own bodies and emotions. To get all the details on RNA Drops and to find out how you can obtain a free mini bottle, go to rnagenesis.com. That's rnagenesis.com.
We're back to the second hour of OffPlanet Radio Live. I'm Randy Maugans with Chris Hawley, and our guest Steve Genier is here. I was just rooting around looking at the calendar, and we will be off next week. We're going to take a break. I think sometimes it's nature's way of telling you to kick back a little bit, and there is a lot of work going on in the background right now. Chris and I are getting ready to reinvent media as you've known it. And that'll be an interesting situation as well. Yeah, there are interesting things brewing creatively in the background. June 19th, we'll feature our guest, Lon Strickler, Phantoms and Monsters. He can be found at naturalplane.blogspots.com. And that should be a very interesting show as well, kind of branching out into some things that I've not done before, but this is the expansion of our consciousness. We have to take on new information and new things, and that's exactly what we're doing. Chris Hawley and Steve Genier, welcome back to the second hour.
Thank you.
We're ready to go.
Ready and raring. That was boy, that hour went fast, and it was an interesting conversation that we were engaging in, because we're dealing in a realm that's, even the term paranormal, what exactly does that mean? We call it paranormal or supernatural because it sits outside of the accepted base of knowledge, and yet if you go back, and again, I always point back to ancient lore, and even the fables, the fairy tales. Gosh, go read the unexpurgated version of Grimm's fairy tales sometimes if you want to see the gruesome side of humanity. All of that stuff was sanitized as well. So we're dealing with the strange, the unaccountable for, if I can dangle a participle there. Steve, where does this paranormal, how do we define this? How do you define it for the purposes of what you do?
First of all, I'd like to say I'm unaccountable as well. No. Sorry, repeat that again. Sorry, Randy.
We all just kind of like zoned out there for a second. Yeah. The working definition for paranormal, because it stretches and it floats a lot. What is your working parameter for the phenomena that you're dealing with?
I even hate sometimes calling it the paranormal, because when I think of the paranormal, I think of all the TV shows and all that out there now. I don't know. I don't know. It's certainly vastly changed from when I began to research myself, and largely, obviously, because of the internet. The internet has brought us so much more, but at the same time, I think it's damaged quite a bit of it as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Much like the TV shows have, really giving people a sense of what they think is going on, when realistically it's probably a speck of dust as to what's really going on. I like to think we're when I'm looking at this, there are no parameters. At least seeking knowledge and seeking understanding. I think once you put a restriction on that, then you obviously restrict any advances that we might ever make in trying to understand what's going on with the unknown. But at the same time, we really do need to get on the same page, at least, and not only maybe collectively sharing ideas, but collectively sharing what findings people are getting out, documenting them, properly documenting them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, if something happens, say, in, a case in New York City, it can be referenced in a case in, say, Manchester in the UK. You know, and it's really tough because now with this field, there's so much ego out there and resistance.
Yes.
You know, and it's really right now has knocked things back to the Stone Ages when it comes to this. Not only that, but I think a lot of it's saturated at the same time. And it really makes things hard.
Well, we have this collision. We have the internet, which clearly boosted the profile of a lot of the subjects we're talking about. And then you have what I call vertically marketed cable television, where we now have a barrage of programming, much like, well, in UFOlogy, it would be ancient aliens. In the fields that I think you and Alex deal with in your group, ghost hunters and various shows like that, where there is a fair amount of theatrics going on and a fair amount of editing in the background of what's allowed, what's not allowed. And in all of this, the show business triumphs over what we would call best practices of investigation.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And it really not only does that, it basically puts a black mark on people who are serious about it, essentially on all levels. Because I mean, you're getting kids entering the field and saying to themselves that I want to go out and investigate the paranormal,
and they could get killed.
Yeah, they don't understand the dangers that come with the dangers and the laws. Yep. You know, there are laws, not with the paranormal, but with society, that you need to abide by. You need to understand the people, because you're dealing with them. You need to understand conditions. You need to understand equipment and you know, how to use and the environment that you're using the equipment in. There's so many variables that these people don't think about or even know about before they get in and pick up a camera and go into a cemetery and snap pictures and say, look, I've got evidence.
Yeah,
I agree completely. I always tell the story. I had a UFO group once that wanted me to join them. They were going to go on a UFO hunt.
Yeah.
How they were going to do it was go to a deserted beach at night with a couple of kegs of beer and some laser lights to see if they could get some UFOs come and get them. And, of course, you can imagine my reaction. I blew up at them, and they don't talk to me anymore.
This whole thing, I mean, it's Dr. Stephen Greer taking people out and calling in UFOs. You know, you might as... Whatever it is we're dealing with in this realm, I don't think summoning them is a real spectacularly good idea. And then you've got the college kids going out and doing it and taking hallucinogenic drugs while they're doing it, which pretty much, you know, well, I won't even go there. But it's like a glamorization. People want a thrill, and they have no idea what they're dealing with. Dealing with hauntings, supernatural events.
Could
be very dangerous
poltergeist.
On many levels. Right.
I could give you several incidents. For instance, just an aspect of what we're talking about here, Randy. You know, there was two college kids who went out on a date, and the date consisted of going to a haunted location. They climbed up this building and got to the interior from the roof, and in the interior is a courtyard. And they got up there, and unfortunately, the girl slipped and fell to her death. And that was their first date. You know,
you have to have permission. You have to make sure that there's insurance. You have to know the location is safe and sound. All these things young kids, as you just pointed out, never think about. Never think about it.
You know, there's that angle, and then there's the angle of people who become I'm thinking of the word here, and it's escaping me, but victims. Victims of it as well. Like, for instance, what I can tell you is an elderly couple. They were seeking assistance because they were having what they would describe as demonic energy in their house, something very evil, and they were confused and naive as to what to do other than seek somebody who might be able to come in and take care of it. They call in a couple, a man and a woman who claim to be people who can clear your house out of whatever else.
Yeah.
They call them in. They go into the house and they tell the elderly couple, after they, did some readings and whatever else, that their house is in fact infested with evil energy, and that the house needs to be cleansed. Of course, the elderly couple, without knowing, are like, well, yeah, anything to take care of the situation. Do whatever you have to. Okay, it's going to cost you $8,000.
Oh.
And of course, they said, oh, fine, absolutely, whatever, just take care of this. And they did their little, mojo, whatever, and bang, left the house, and the couple continued to experience some bad vibe in the house. They approached that couple and asked them, I thought this was going to take care of the situation, and they simply said there's no guarantees. The elderly couple not only were ripped off of $8,000, they were taken victim, but they fought back. They took these two to court and won their money back, thankfully, in this situation. But this is the type of stuff that's going on, because people know how to utilize, basically taking a situation that's completely unknown to many and using it to their advantage, and you know what? Taking this advantage to a whole level that is sickening.
Well, there's no ethics or standards.
No.
In this, and of course the internet's to blame. It's in my opinion a lot to blame, not completely, because it's the Wild West and anything goes. But we definitely need some type of, as I said, ethical standards of how things are done and how people maybe even somehow become licensed or something to at least be reliable, to know what they're talking about in this situation. But to just hear about an old couple like that are still left with maybe a disgruntled spirit of some type or whatever it is going on in their home is just sad. That's a terrible story.
Well, there's a couple of layers to this that, first off, the people who got fleeced, and that's really unfortunate, because there is nowhere to turn. Our society has denied the existence of the supernatural, and even the people who you would consider to be spiritual practitioners. Now, I come at this from a spiritual side because I was trained as a long time ago, I was trained as a Christian minister, and I saw the supernatural operate, and I saw the reaction of men who were supposedly trained to be spiritual leaders who could not deal with the demonic. I literally watched a woman who was very clearly manifesting a demon inside of a church, and a pastor standing there looking at me, hopelessly freaking out as this woman's eyes were rolling up inside of her head. And I'm like, you don't know what to do. We've seen people writhing on the floors of churches, completely possessed by demons, and a lot of this is because the people who were supposed to be spiritually informed about this, whatever phenomena it is, are not capable of dealing with it. At the end of the day, they don't have the power to deal with that. The ancient cultures had the shamans and the various practitioners who knew about the other side of the veil and could deal with this. So now we're in a place where science is the god, and science simply chooses to ignore anything it can't quantify, create a thesis about, and then either prove or disprove with empirical knowledge. So we're in this horrible situation where you have the gap where the charlatans come in, and of course they want money for this, and UFOlogy is loaded with it. You can go to a conference every weekend, and you can meet the charlatans, the whores who are out there bilking everybody out of their money, selling them these fantasy stories. And I'm quite certain, Steve, that the area that you're working in is loaded with it as well. So one of the biggest issues to me is doing what we do, is getting information out and letting people, first off, penetrate the understanding that there are things unexplained because we have lost knowledge. The ancients understood this. My friends, Duncan and Miranda, understand this. They do these investigations, and they've told me stories about people who have spirits brought into their houses by either ill-intentioned or just stupidly well-meaning New Age people. So we have this entire cultural clash right now with the supernatural going on.
Yeah, and the people with the knowledge and experience seem to get kicked under the carpet, as the carpetbaggers take over the subject matter. And we got a serious problem if you really want to look at it. A big one.
Yeah. Where does somebody go who has a paranormal experience or UFO abduction? I read that article at the beginning of the show that came out of the Canadian newspaper website, because I suspect that now these stories are just bleeding out all over the place because the veil really is thinning, really is becoming common, and it's hard to contain. So now more than ever, it's like really important that people who do have integrity, people that have substance, and people that have, let's just say it, brass balls to be able to deal with this stuff, need to step up and start informing the public.
I agree. And Steve, this is a good point for you, because I know that the first thing you two do is when you go look at something is go to figure out, like you did with that child, the most logical reasons that are, maybe unknown to the people that are involved with it, electrical or, positioning or weather related or anything like that. Why don't you explain a little bit, because I've listened to you before, just like how you basically go about going to a place and investigating to see if there is an issue going on. Because some kid out there, you might save his life by just giving him some basics.
Just before we get into that, I just wanted to add to what Randy was saying there, educating people. And there's one thing that I've been doing with my experience, my time in the field, is going to schools and talking to kids about it. And it's really amazing the reaction that I'm getting from these kids. They're a lot smarter than you think, and it's really scary though, but there's a certain area where they sort of, I don't know, something corrupts them, and I don't know, it just, everything goes away. But anyways, with an investigation, what I do, what I've essentially always done, when I approach a scenario, when I'm, given a scenario, okay, I want to know everything about what's going on, before I even enter, say, it being a house. There's something going on with the house. I want to know everything, what's going on. And that's everything from, does this person experience any mental issues? Is there any medication, alcohol, drug relations in there at all? bipolar, bipolars, anything that could, obviously affect what is going on in this situation. I'm not going to put myself in harm's way. I'm not going to put anyone who's with me in harm's way. Because trust me, I've been in situations where, having to deal with somebody who is bipolar, and it's at times cannot be. It's not a pretty sight. It's not a pretty scene, especially when they go all ape wire, So
or you can say that.
But it's. I want to know everything because I really want to know because the environment itself plays a major part in what's going on in that house.
Absolutely.
And that's done first.
Yes.
You have to get that with them, yeah.
Well, you have to weed. Look at it's a no-brainer. You have to weed out the stuff that we understand before you can get to what might be paranormal or unknown.
Right.
You have to set aside what we know.
Absolutely. And then I just want to throw this in, and I learned it from you and other guests you've had on your show. That is, you don't just charge in by yourself or with another friend and split up so that you're both in different parts of a unknown location and think you're going to start photographing or, getting video and audio on ghosts. You could get yourself killed. Everything should be done in pairs. For one, you'd have a witness, and number two, if something happens to you, have someone to get help. I mean, I listen to stories of young people going on, well, I'm going to call them ghost hunts because they're not a research of a haunting, and I just wonder how they got back alive.
Yeah, safety is number one. Safety is number one over anything. Safety for you, safety for the people that you're responsible for. For the people that you have to, try and help, make understand what's going on with their situation. I mean, their safety as well. That's priority. Is to help those people as much as possible. Where many of these people who go into these locations, their number one priority is getting evidence. And if you ask me, if that's the case, then how could you even call it evidence if you don't even know what your first priority is?
And don't think you're going to collect it in a half an hour because the family went down and got a burger and let you sit in their house with flashlights, and that's going to get you enough evidence to solve an ongoing situation. I mean, these are the things that we have to bring out there and stop these people from doing because they're dangerous to everyone, including the family. Not to mention the damage they could do if you do have some type of entity or spiritual thing happening. If you're ill-equipped and you don't know what you're doing, you could do so much more damage than you ever dreamt of by just going in and stirring up the pot. You have to have people with experience and who maybe have experienced these things, both experience in research and possibly have dealt with it one-on-one themselves. To at least guide you. Please, the people listening, don't go out and do your own ghost hunt because you bought a ghost kit. And don't go looking for UFOs if you don't know what you're doing. We could end up where possibly no one ever sees you again. Now that's frightening, but it's truthful. Don't do stupid things.
I want to interject this again because somebody in the chat room had pointed out to me, I asked the question, where do we go if we want reliable source for information? And especially since we're talking about paranormal tonight, Steve, you have something going on in your surroundings, something in your house, whatever, apparitions, poltergeist activity, who knows what. Where do people go Are you aware that there is a network, or are you aware that there are reliable places that people can go to get information and help in dealing with whatever it is that is causing them an issue?
It's really tough. It's really tough even now, especially with the saturation. Everybody's ghost hunting, everybody's investigating paranormal. But let me say one thing: the turnover is high. What I would suggest, if looking for somebody to come into your house to possibly give you a hand of any situation that you might be having, look at the amount of time that they have spent, in the field. If they've been doing it for 5, 10, 15 years, then they might be a little bit more reliable than the person who's been only doing it for a few months or a couple of years. They've probably seen your situation many times before and might be able to help you out to exactly explain what's going on. A reference, it's tough. I usually get emails and calls from people in areas that I may not be able to get to. But I tend to keep in touch with a lot of people that, in various areas that that might be able to help that person. I will reference them to, make a connection for those people. Networking, it's essential, but it's also tough. Because there's a lot of people out there that just don't have anything to do with it. They just want to do their own thing, and that's it.
You basically have the prima donnas out there. Then you have the disruptors. And see, we see this all the time. We basically, I barely even want to have comments on my website anymore. I will not have a forum. I will not put up a wiki because of the disruption that occurs in this particular space. And I've seen it as well bleed over into the paranormal websites that I've gone to, where there is a great deal of disruption from what I will call professional debunkers, or even worse, the disinfo artists who are out there basically doing COINTELPRO, putting out false information, bad information. We have a problem because, again, we're dealing in areas where there is no certification, there's no professionalism, and I'm not calling for that. I'm not sure what the answer is. It's funny, because I listened to the show that you and Alex did with, Dark Conversations. You were talking about policing the paranormal with this guy, Steven, I think. And you guys really did a legitimate, full-on, it was obvious that was passionate, and that each of you had very passionate beliefs about this. Where do we go with this? I mean, I'm not a big fan of professional accreditation in a lot of levels, or licensing. I would like to see standards, accountability, and a legitimacy given to these areas of inquiry, though. How do we work that?
Well, I agree. I don't like that you get many titles of an expert or certified, and you sit there. Those are when you see that red bell or red lights are going off. They have to go off.
Can I make a suggestion here?
Yeah.
I tell people, because I've asked these questions also, and I tell them, well, you're not going to like my answer because it's not cut and dry and it's not quick. I can't take and put your finger on a number and say, call here and that's it. Just like you hire a contractor on your house or a plumber or anything else, you're going to have to do some legwork. Yeah. And people don't like that. You're going to have to go and research people, if it's something that has to come to your house or something local, people in your area that are doing this subject matter, be it a UFO problem or a spiritual problem or, a demon, whatever. Look who's doing it and then investigate them. Look at their site. And just as you pointed out, Steve, how long have they been doing this? Do they have a lot of experience? Have they been successful? Do they have references? And they will be able to give you some if they have them. Do they have they themselves dealt one-on-one with this situation? Have they either seen and dealt with an unknown craft or been in a haunting that was rough and rugged and got through it? You know, then you have to contact them, read what they have written about themselves, and talk to them. And if they come off as dingbats that are just looking for you to be a hook to make them famous, run. Mm-hmm. If they are interested in you, seem to know what they're talking about, and seem your gut is going to tell you, and seem like they could possibly help you without any kind of hook or I need your name and address plastered all over and, you know, sell your personal information. If they are truly what they say they are, you're going to know it. But you can't just be lackadaisical about it. You have to do the work because you're in an area where there are no guidelines, licensing, there are no policing, there's nothing. It's the Wild West. So you've got to protect yourself. So legwork is involved and research is involved. But if you get the right people to help you, it could make, you know, the difference between a wonderful life and a miserable life. So do it.
I think another red flag that people need to know is, do they charge?
Right.
You know, do they charge for the services? Because I'll tell you right now, I've never charged a penny, even for travel. I've never charged a penny, and never will, nor will I ever, because I see no point in it. Because I am doing this not only to truly understand what's going on, but I'm here to try to explain and help others who are, you know, wanting to figure out what's going on in their situation as well. So, I mean, why do I need to charge for something that, you know, number one, I don't fully understand. I'm still a student. I'm still learning and constantly learning, as we all are with this. You know,
you know, I agree with that, but I do use a psychic medium that is the best I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And she's very serious about her work. There's nothing dopey about her. And if she gets nothing, she'll say to you, I've got nothing. I've got nothing for you. I can't do it. Then she doesn't charge you. But if she is going to be working with you and she's doing her job, she does charge. She has to live. She has to pay her bills. She has to eat. And I understand that. But if she can't, the difference between her, though, and other people that charge, if she gets nothing and feels nothing, she removes herself. Of course, doesn't charge them anything and doesn't help. But you got to understand, people have to live, too. But it's like $8,000 to help old people is ridiculous and excessive. And there are people that don't have money and are in serious trouble, be it whatever it is, and you have to help them if you're a decent human being. So all of this is all ethics and standards, you know, but that's pretty hard to force on the human race. But there are people out there that absolutely are good and will help you. Maybe they do need gas money to get to your house, but they will do what they can and do it right.
It really is a delicate balance, because I'm sitting here listening to you. I've had these arguments inside my head about where do we draw the line on, you know, clearly, you know, people need to eat, they need to support themselves, and at the same time, the culture that we're in is so, well, there's so many mercenaries out there now that a lot of people are very leery of the whole money trap. But part of the issue is that, for instance, getting a level of professionalism, and I use that term loosely because I don't mean it in the legal sense, but it requires training, time, a modest amount of equipment, I suspect, and just the energy that goes into doing something. I mean, even in doing this radio show, there's some overhead, there's some energy put out. So we're on the horns of a dilemma in terms of, no, we can't be mercenary about it, and yet at the same time, people do need to support the efforts. How do you straddle that?
And again, this medium that I'm talking about lives in a very modest fashion in a very small little house. She doesn't drive a Mercedes. She doesn't have a television show. She drives a Honda, but she has to survive. And that's the road she chose to travel. And believe me, she's much better or right on when she is right on than the so-called psychics that are being paid huge salaries on television shows. So it is a very tough balance, and it's the morals and ethics of the people involved in it, and how, you know, that's an important thing. But isn't it with all people you deal with, from your plumber to your doctor to your whoever? You want people that will do right by you in a fair way. Well, the same applies to this.
But with the plumber or doctor or anything like that, they have knowledge. They know what's going on. Where when it comes to the paranormal, we don't know.
It's a crapshoot. You're absolutely right.
You know, we can only theorize through experience and some knowledge as to what might be going on. But I mean, that's where I'm going with the whole, you know, charging for something we don't fully understand it.
And I actually appreciate the transparency of that position too. I mean, it's the humility level that you just expressed is, you know, I'm actually touched by that, because in a lot of ways it's the most honest way to approach this as a student, as a journeyman, as somebody who is in a learning experience. I mean, that's the way I look at what I do. I'm basically, this started out as me on a private quest, almost kicking and screaming against it sometimes. And the rewards sometimes are venturing out into the unknown. So, I mean, I totally appreciate that position. Your paranormal group, again, that's, give us the name of that. It's
Southern Ontario Paranormal Society.
Right. Now, this is a non-profit organization. How informal is it? Do you deal with any of the organizational aspects? Is it an organization in name only? How's it structured?
Me. Pretty much me. Okay. All me. No, I'm just kidding. No. No.
In some cases, that's actually sadly true.
There's true. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What's wrong with that?
You know what? To be honest, it's like a family, really.
Yeah.
Because we've been together now for many of the guys in the on the group, or however you want to look at it. I've been together for almost 7 years now. Like, it's my personal research, which is going on for close to 25 years now. But it was only recently that I decided that maybe I wanted to sort of bring a few people into the fold and sort of work with people and sort of share and network. And that's where Southern Ontario Paranormal came from. And it's small, and I like to keep it small because, like I said, it's a family sort of environment. And we work well as a team. We're all on the same page.
That's very important.
On how we look and deal with stuff. You know, so I think we all look at it like that, Randy. More of a family than sort of a business or team structure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any cases you're working on now, Steve?
Chris, I have a case that will blow your mind.
Oh, good.
Oh,
we like this when it happens.
On, blow it.
Blow her mind.
Unfortunately, I don't have permission yet to use the photographs, but as soon as I do, you will see the photographs, Chris. But what I can tell you is I've been approached by somebody who was actually hunting, and with one of their deer cams, which was situated on a tree overlooking a meadow, and then in the background a forest, like a tree line. And he sent me 2 still shots from this deer cam. And the one shot, you see the field, You see the birds in the field, collecting the worms or whatever they're doing, just going about business. And in the top of the framing of the picture, it's been like sort of scrambled, as if a frequency is fooling around with the cam. That's the only way I can describe it. It's white with just weird outline. And the second frame, which is 4.5 seconds later, with a temperature difference of about 4 or 5 degrees, I believe. I can't remember.
Did you say 4 to 5 degrees difference?
Difference.
Okay. That's pretty profound. Wow.
Yes, and in the background, just before the tree line, there is a human-like figure in a bubble.
Oh,
hovering.
I gotta see this.
And I'm telling you, I'm serious. I've ran the photos through everything that I normally do to distinguish any editing or any
artifacts like that would show up from Photoshop or something.
Any photoshopping, anything. These things are legit. There's absolutely no depixelization, nothing. There's no layering. They're as is. And I've talked to the guy whose camera took these pictures, and he's bluntly asked me, like, can you tell me what this is? I don't know what it is. I was going through because I took pictures. I thought maybe deer or something had set it off. And no, I see this and I can't explain it, and but that's right now we're just in the midst of working on that. In fact, he might be on the season finale of Nocturnal Frequency this Sunday coming up in the first segment, maybe.
Well, what do you think it was?
My mind's blown, Chris.
A white human form inside a bubble.
No, it's not white. It looks as if somebody is either stepping into, or within, or coming out
of an orb.
Not an orb, but like a portal. Like a
oh my God, Randy!
Stepping into my world.
This thing is like phenomenal. It's one of the best pictures that I've seen that I can't seriously debunk. Say, look at there's something Photoshop filter. There's something not right about this, but it's as far as my photography expertise tells me, it's as is, as shot.
Now that temperature drop that was documented there, that's a real telling situation and something that a lot of people, maybe your amateur ghost hunters sometimes miss nuances in this. Paranormal activity has a certain feel to it. I believe you probably understand this, including temperature changes, shifts in energy, shifts in light. Can you comment on that at all?
Theory is that whatever we're dealing with, if you will, can manipulate temperature through energy. And that's essentially how people, I guess, sort of measure what might be going on. Most people would take a temperature gauge or thermometer or reader or whatever and simply go, oh, look at this. There's a ghost in here, and not even take into consideration where they're pointing the damn thing.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. But essentially theory dictates that's what's going on. But the one thing about these pictures, too, as I mentioned before, the birds in the picture don't even seem bothered by whatever's going on. They don't seem bothered. They
didn't fly away or...
No, they're not flying away. They're on the ground as if as if nothing's going on around them. Nothing unusual, at least. Threatening. which is another odd aspect of these pictures. Actually, that was the first aspect that really interested me. I'm like, okay, the birds, there's something weird about the birds. Are they real? You know, and I was asking, you know, what about the birds are real. They were there, and, you know, they're there. But anyways, the guy giving me hopefully a few more shots that were taken with the camera before and after to sort of, I don't know, put things together. The pieces all together.
Could you tell if it was intentionally approaching the camera or just passing it by on its way back to where it was coming from, back into the hole, the, you know, bubble, the entrance?
Given the direction, you know, of the photos themselves, I would say whatever it was passing by the camera into the field to the tree line and wherever else.
And just got caught.
And apparently, from what I understand, that was the only frame that particular figure was in. The very next few frames are normal.
So that was very fast also.
Within 4.5 seconds.
Right, to cross that field.
Mm-hmm.
Tree line. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, was this, and I missed some of the details because the Skype was a little clippy. Was this video frames or was this still camera being shot with, you know, very fast repeat photography?
It's a still shot. Still shot. Yeah.
Still
repeat
shots.
Photography. Yeah.
Okay.
It could be that it was so quick that the birds weren't even aware it was taking place. I don't even know if that's possible. But if it crossed, depends on how much distance was between the tree line, the circle thing it entered, and the camera. But if it was like impossible for you to normally cross that distance in that time, possibly they weren't even aware of it and didn't look up from there, you know, pecking out for bugs. That's. I can't wait to see this.
Have you heard anything of it? Anything similar?
No, I've never heard anybody catch anything like that.
No, that's pretty astonishing. Wow.
Yes, absolutely. So hopefully things will work out pretty soon, and you know.
Yeah, you know, I got to write something about it. I can't take it. I'll start.
Yeah, that's like dangling. That's like dangling red meat over a dog cage. My gosh.
Bacon. I love bacon. Don't do that to me.
I think Chris hates it when I do that. Yes.
Yes. Steve, can I write about that? That's the best you've ever. Forget the guy on the bridge. That's the best thing you've ever told me right there. Holy mackerel.
Well, I like the guy on the bridge story mainly because, you know, it kind of gave us a picture into some of your background as well, Steve. In terms of being an experiencer and also being a researcher and being able to maintain what I consider to be a really high level of objectivity in all of this. I think that's really important. And that's one of the reasons why I was kind of excited as this interview came up, because I went back and listened to your shows and looked at, you know, what you guys were digging into and realized that there was a lot of integrity in what you're talking about. And that's something that's really sorely lacking right now on the internet, especially on radio, on television and media, is integrity and a fair amount of experience. Like I said, there's a lot of charlatans out there. There's a lot of even credentialed people who are hogging up the media right now, who basically lack both the personal level of experience and also the ability to stand back and be objective even about their own theories.
Yep, that's very true. Now, Steve is great, but I'm sorry, Steve, you are going to go back and see if you can catch this again.
Oh, man.
Well, we're gonna. That's part of the plan to figure out exactly where exactly these photos were taken and the area, and you know,
run a camera there.
Let the research begin.
So you don't know exactly the geolocation of this phenomena?
Nothing. You know, like
gosh.
I said, I know the bare essentials, and like I've just recently started talking with the person who took the pictures, or with the camera, or owns the camera, and actually he's a good friend of somebody in the group actually who brought it to my attention and wanted my advice on the photos. And I said, well, okay, well, just get them to send me the originals. And I'll take a look. I'll take a look, and I'll run them through all my programs and all that I normally do with photos. And because he wanted to know if they were legit. And I said, yeah, well, I'll do the best that I can to tell you, and we'll go from there. And of course, the subheading of the photos when he sent them were Bubble Boy. And immediately I was thinking, okay, what have I gotten myself into here? But,
and you, Steve, you know what I'm going to tell you, because I'm an old mother hubbard. Don't run over and jump in that corner of the field. Be very careful. And I would explain that to that guy too, because he could step in and that's it. We don't see him again. I mean, God. That is an amazing
Or he winds up getting
story.
sawed in half by a vortex.
Oh, God!
Exactly.
I'm not going to sleep tonight.
Well, I go back to the work of Charles Fort and the book, what was the book called? The Something of the Damned. It's an old book. It's been around, but I read it when I was a kid.
The Village of the Damned?
No. Now I've got to figure out what this book was called. Book of the Damned. It was written by Charles Fort back in. This goes back to early 20th century, probably the 1920s. And Fort detailed what's now, it's an entire realm of genre called Fortean knowledge, Fortean events, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But he details a lot of this strange phenomena. And he was actually an incredible skeptic in terms of how he presented all of this anomalous activity. But it's kind of a template that I see for researchers today in terms of looking at weird phenomena much the way I think all of us do. Dispassionately, but yet with a certain level of, okay, that's interesting, let's look at this. So anybody out there that's interested in this, highly recommend it. You can probably get a PDF because I'm sure it's out of copyright. Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. That'll be my book review for tonight.
Very good. I'm going to look into that.
Yeah,
And Steve, you've got to keep us posted.
Yeah, absolutely.
On what this is all about.
I would love to see this photograph. I really would.
I can't wait. Yeah.
This is exciting stuff. We'll be.
You'll have to come back and tell us the whole thing.
Well, and even better, we'll tune in to the show.
And listen, of course.
On Sunday night, tell people how they can do that.
Oh, simple. Just go to BlogTalk Radio, either in the search box, type in Nocturnal Frequency Radio, or you can find us directly at blogtalkradio.com/nocturnal_frequency.
Excellent.
And if you just do any search for Nocturnal Frequency Radio, I think it comes up, and you can click on it. It'll take you right into Blog Talk and his site.
Yeah,
and
go to
his,
Blog Talk.
His radio. Yeah.
And, of course, you can find Chris Hawley's Paranormal World by simply putting it into your search engine, and it'll pop right up, and you can go over there, and there are literally hundreds of articles that you can stream through. Chris has spent an enormous amount of time and years and sorrow and tears and piss and vinegar doing all this. So you don't want to miss that. And as we back out here, we'll just remind you, this is OffPlanet Radio, and you can find us at offplanetradio.com, where the show will be promptly posted in about 72 hours or so. I know people are complaining about that. They don't understand. I do go back over and clean up the files a little bit. I don't edit them, but I do make them so that they're a bit more comfortable to listen to. And there is a fair amount of work that goes into posting it. So sorry about the delay. The ideal thing is get on the website on Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock and listen live. Wow, what a concept. And I want to thank... as always, Chris, because Chris has really come to the table with some interesting things, and I want to thank our guest tonight, Steve Genier, of Nocturnal Frequency Radio. And Steve, we're going to get you and Alex together. If we have to, we'll do it off live. But I would really like to sit down with the two of you and do another round of this at some point.
Make sure you have a cage large enough.
A cage. That's awesome. So we're going to be off. We're going to be off for a week here. We're going to take a break, and then we will be back on. Gosh, where's the calendar here? When are we coming back?
The 19th.
The 19th. And tell them about our guest that night, Chris.
That's going to be Lon Strickler from Phantoms and Monsters, and people who know who he is or have followed his site know that Lon has covered every aspect of the paranormal for many, many years, and I'm sure he has many interesting things to talk to us about, including UFOs, aliens, hauntings, remote viewings, crop circles, psychics, you name it, he's covered it also, or he's heard it. So I'm sure he has more than one interesting tidbit for us coming up on the 19th. That will be on the 19th, and we'll see you then. This is OffPlanet Radio Live. I'm Randy Maugans. The truth is out there. It's inside you. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night.
This is OffPlanet Radio.